Imagine growing a new body. Well, you can. This is Robert Manni, host of Guys Radio. And tonight I'm hosting anthropologist and shaman, Dr. Alberto Villoldo. And we're going to talk about just that, growing a new body on Guys Radio tonight on KCAA at 8 p.m. Pacific Time. 102.3, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. The podcast drops worldwide tomorrow. Guys Radio. Thanks for your support. Be there.
It's Guy Radio. Here's your host, Robert Manni.
Welcome to Guys Radio. This is your host, Robert Manni, welcoming you to the show where men and women can be at their best. Everyone wins. Guys Radio. We bring you guests with information that will inform you, inspire you, empower you, help you think and feel, and hopefully act. Guys Radio. This is your guy, Robert Manni. I'm here for you. I do my very best to bring you the guests and the information that'll help you out to live your best life. You might not agree with everything you hear. That's okay. Use what you want to use what feels right for you. That's how it works on Guys Radio. Today we're going to talk about longevity and what you can do to live to your longest and best life. I don't think anybody would disagree with that would be our goal, particularly for the boomers out there. They're thinking about longevity now because, time keeps flashing by. So we're going to talk with a very, very well-known shaman and doctor. His name is Dr. Alberto Villoldo. We're going to talk about his book. It's called Grow a New Body, How Spirit and Power Plant Nutrients Can Transform Your Health. It's a fantastic book. He's got a program in there that can help you kind of reset your gut bacteria and get away from sugar and really be able to live a long and healthy life. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of information we're going to get to, but it's all about longevity here on Guys Radio. And it's one of the themes I really want to lean on going forward, longevity. I think, particularly as I mentioned with boomers, everybody's going to be into longevity now. How can we live long, healthy lives, not just exist? How can we live long, healthy lives, and how can we avoid that plague of Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's that now affects up to 50% of people over 80 are going to be hit with those things, and not good. So, but there's things we can do to put ourselves in the best position to live longer and healthier and more active lives. So we'll help you out with that as best as we can here on Guys Radio. And today, once again, our special guest is Dr. Albert Villoldo. We're going to speak to him in a few minutes. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on. I have been here in San Diego now since, about October, from many years in New York City. I'm happy with the change, but I realized a couple of things, that moving out of New York City is really like moving out of a country. It's like leaving a country and going to another country. It's such a very distinct place with all its diversity, all its people. The vibe there is very different than here. And I loved it, and it was perfect for me when I was there, and now that I've moved, I'm glad I made the move. Change is good. It would be easier. It would have been easy for me to stay in New York, just lock in there for the rest of my life because it has so many resources, but I think this is a good idea. Make a move, do something different, and so far, so good. And with the pandemic we have, New York City, based on how it's built. It's a vertical city. It's on Manhattan is an island, and there's so many people, and proximity there has always been a something that's very special about the city, and now it becomes something that's going to be very difficult to navigate because there's so many people and everybody jams into places, and it's crowded to begin with. Like, what are you going to do with the subways? You're nose to nose right now. How are you going to have social distancing in the future? I don't know. So hopefully this COVID will fall off at a certain point, and we won't have to deal with it, and things can get back to normal. But I think it's going to take time. I think we've got to be patient. And as things are opening up here, we're seeing that a lot of people who've been cooped up are starting to really bust loose in a way where it's going way past the kind of game plan. But it's tough for Americans because we've gotten so many mixed signals from the federal government. Fauci's good, Fauci's bad, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, all these different things. And then you have every individual state has a say in how they want to run their states. That's why it's the United States of America. It's a democratic republic. And it's a unique country and a very good country for that reason. However, it would be nice if we had some clarity in terms of the messaging we're getting about this virus, because now, unfortunately, it has become politicized. Where, okay, if you're on one side of the fence, you want to stay home and wear a mask, and if you're on the other side, you just want to ignore the whole thing and say it's like the flu and it's all about vaccines and Bill Gates, etc. And it's very difficult for the average Joe out there or Josephine out there to say, hey, what's the truth? We really don't know. So I would suggest don't watch too much news, stay informed, but focus on strengthening your immune system, eat the right foods, get rest. You got to wear the mask when you go into stores, so you're going to have to do that anyhow. And just be smart about it, particularly if you have kids. And I feel really bad for the kids. I have a 7-year-old, and this is a whole new thing. First of all, he did a great job. We moved away from New York, so he's in a completely different part of the country. He's handling it really well. He got along great with the kids in school, and now there's no school, so it's another new. So let's all keep things like this in mind, that we're all going through new things, and to be kind to one another, all right? Guys Radio, your host, Robert Manni. We're going to be back with Dr. Alberto Villoldo. I can't wait to grow a new body.
It's Guy Radio.
Guys Radio, as I mentioned, everybody, I've got a very special guest on the show today, Dr. Alberto Villoldo, and he is an amazing guy. He's trained as a psychologist, as a medical anthropologist, and he studied the healing practices of the Amazon and the Andean shamans. He directs the Four Winds Society, where he trains individuals all across the world in the practice of shamanic energy medicine. He's the founder of the Light Body School, campuses in New York, California, Miami, Germany. Dr. Villoldo has written numerous best-selling books, including Shaman, Healer, Sage, The Four Insights, Power Up Your Brain. Today, we're going to talk about the book, Grow a New Body, and it's based on his One Spirit Medicine teachings and book. He's coming to us today from Chile. Welcome to Guys Radio, Albert Villoldo.
Thank you, Robert. Good to be with you.
So I thought we could start right in on your journey. Now, Dr. Villoldo went to the Amazon for many years, and I think our audience would love to know, why did you go there? What were you doing? Why did you go there? What did you experience?
So let me tell you a little bit about my story. I started out as researching the brain. I was teaching at San Francisco State University, and my laboratory was in a brain lab. And when you're in academia, lab space is really hard to come by. But nobody wanted the brain lab because you were surrounded by jars with brains in formaldehyde, and the place smelled terrible. But I had the benefit of 200 brains around me helping me with my research. So if I ever got into trouble, I could always ask for a second opinion. But we were looking at whether we could create psychosomatic health, because we knew we could create psychosomatic disease. And it seemed strange to me that the brain would be wired only for disease. It had to be wired for performance, for health, we see it in athletics, we see it in music, we see it in creativity. The brain had to be wired for creativity. And how did you tap into those circuits to be able to create health, and not only to create stress, which is deadly? And after a couple of years of looking at the brain and looking at a number of different methodologies and slicing and dicing and staining the brain, putting it under the microscope, I decided that I had to go to a different system other than the patriarchal, reductionistic methodology of Western science, which is really, really good for studying things that are dead, but it's not so good for studying things that are living, including the human brain.
So how did you decide to go to the Amazon?
Well, one day I decided that I had to leave the laboratory and go into a natural laboratory, because science, you can take it anywhere. It doesn't have to work only in the lab. So I went to the Amazon to work with the native healers, with men and women that only had the mind's ability to create health in order to heal. They had their magical potions and spells and incantations and rattles and feathers. And we know that that stuff really, really works, because we know that the placebo really, really works. Did you know that the placebo is 92% as effective as Viagra? And if you paint a little placebo pill blue, it's 94% as effective.
Great.
So we know that the mind can create just about any state that you want. And how did these ancient peoples that had a wisdom that goes back 50,000 years know how to work with the mind to create extraordinary health? So I went into a living laboratory and discovered that they were not only excellent at creating health, but they understood that the mind could kill you or it could heal you. And it could go either way. I met a number of sorcerers that were experts at hurting people and even at killing people. And I remember talking to one of them. Actually, I'll tell you a story. I was funded by a foundation that sponsored my early research. And one day I get a call from them and they say, Alberto, we need an anthropologist in Haiti to study voodoo, just to finish up a study. Our junior anthropologist got sick. And I said, I don't know anything about voodoo or about Haiti. And they go, we know. I said, my expertise is the Upper Amazon. He said, yes, we're reviewing your grant proposal right at this very minute. And I said, well, when do you need me in Haiti? So the following week, I landed in Haiti and I met this senior anthropologist, the old man, we called him. He was 45 years old. I was in my late 20s. And I asked the voodoo priest he was working with, how do you hurt someone? And he said to me, it's so easy. Basically, what you do is you track in their energy field, in their aura. You track in their field for the imprints of disease that runs in their family. So if heart disease runs in their family, that's going to be in the energetic blueprint. It's going to be in the field. If dementia runs in the family, if strokes run in the family, we look for that. And then we just tweak it. We give it a little bit of energy. And 2 weeks later, that person has a heart attack. Mm-hmm. I go, amazing. Well, how do you heal? He said, it's the same technique, but you use it to heal instead of to hurt. You look at the field, at the energy field, and you find where there is that information in the blueprint about heart disease or about disease in general. And it's a dark spot in the field where the energy is stuck. It's not moving. And you go in and you extract it, you clear it. And immediately that reduces the probability of that person having heart disease, because you're clearing the blueprint. You're changing the blueprint before it gets somatized into the body and manifest as a heart condition. Mm-hmm. In that week that I spent in Haiti, I learned more about healing than I had in 2 years in a laboratory.
Wow. So when you originally went to the Amazon, you were connected with people? You knew where to go? Did you know what to expect? Were there any surprises? Did you ever feel you were in danger? Did you ever doubt what you were experiencing and seeing?
When I first went to I spent many years going to the Amazon. When I first went there, I went there as a tourist because I wanted to see the birds. But then I wanted to work with the people. I closed my lab at San Francisco State. And I'm a medical anthropologist, so there's always a loose network of anthropologists around the world. You just have to pick up a phone and say, hey, introduce yourself, and we share resources. So I spoke with an outstanding, amazing anthropologist named Marlene Dopkin de Rios, renowned, she's passed away now. And I asked her, who are the really good healers in the upper Amazon that you work with? And she said, come on down to Peru and I'll introduce you to some of them. And she introduced me to the real wisdom keepers. Today, everybody's a shaman in the Amazon, and everybody's buying ayahuasca in the marketplace and giving it to innocent Americans that are doing spiritual tourism. But it's a very powerful and really useful medicine in the right hands. So I met some of these practitioners that were fabulous at helping you to rewire your brain for health. And they did that with the help of the medicine plants and with their rites of passage and ceremonies. Because remember, there are regions in the brain that only change with ceremony. That's why we have ceremonies in every culture. Mm-hmm. Rites of passage to take you from a terrible relationship to freedom, to take you from being a boy to becoming a man, from being a girl to becoming a woman. And without these rites of passage, healing did not happen. And this is one of the things that's missing in our Western medicine.
So were you ever afraid or ever in doubt of what you were kind of experiencing and learning when you those first couple of years of trips down there to the Amazon, or were you totally open and like really just gobbling it all up, all this new information?
Those early years in the Amazon were really kind of scary because I was in an environment I wasn't prepared for. I'm a city boy, mm-hmm. and I landed here. I landed in the Amazon, and my guide, the first thing he does is he gives me a revolver, a .38 revolver. And he said, here, take this, you might need it. And I put it in my belt, and I traveled for the next 2 months with this revolver. And finally, the last day, as we're making our way back into camp, where there's a slithering motion in the water. We were wading through 8-inch deep water because the river had flooded. And I see the shape slithering through the water, and I pull the revolver out, and the jungle is so moist, so wet, that I couldn't pull the revolver out of its sheath. And I finally comes out and goes flying out of my hand. And my guide says, you fool, that's just an innocent boa constrictor. It's just a harmless serpent. So I had many times that I was really terrified. And terrified because of my fear of life, not my fear of the jungle. The jungle is, and I'll tell you a story. I was walking with a shaman and his wife, and we came to a clearing, and they said to me, Alberto, walk across the clearing and see what happens. And I walk across the clearing, I step back into the rainforest, and it's full of song. The parrots and the macaws and the monkeys, and the first step, the second step, the third step, everything stops. And they come up to me and they say, see, they know you don't belong here. They know you and your people have been kicked out of the garden. They know that you don't belong in the garden. So I said, right, come on. I might be a white boy from California, but I was convinced that the animals were simply smelling my toothpaste and my athlete's foot powder, my hair mousse, my deodorant, and we smell very unusual. So there were two Shipibo Indians that were cooking a snake on a spit right by the river, and they were collecting the boa fat in a can, and I asked them if I could have the boa fat, and they offered it to me. And I stripped down to my shorts, and I start putting the boa fat on my body, and it reeks. Convinced that I'm going to walk back into the rainforest, and the animals are going to smell another boa slithering back in. And they're looking at me a little strangely, and I say, it's okay, I'm an anthropologist. And I make my way back to the rainforest, and I take the first step, it's full of song, the second step, and the third step. And then everything stopped. except for about 600 flies that I had around me. And it took me 10 years to be able to walk into the rainforest and have it continue singing around me and not stop singing. But I had to heal that part of myself that was a predator, that part of myself that was violent. And if we speak in the language of mythology, I had to heal that part of myself that had been kicked out of the Garden of Eden. We have the only mythology in the planet in which we were kicked out of paradise, kicked out of the garden. In every other culture, you find that the Great Spirit has given the garden to the Native Americans and the Buddhists and the Sub-Saharan Africans to be the stewards and the caretakers of the garden. But we were kicked out. We don't belong in nature anymore. And when people ask me how do I reconnect with nature, I tell them, you've got to go and heal that original wounding where we lost our original home and our original state that was deathless, where we could speak with God and the rivers and the trees. And then you can walk in the rainforest and have it continue singing around you.
Oh, great story. My guest on Guys Radio is your host, Robert Manni, Dr. Alberto Villoldo. We're talking about shamanism and his work in anthropology, and also the book Grow a New Body that we're going to get to. So you were the first, upon my reading, I discovered you were the first Westerner to be kind of indoctrinated or accepted as a shaman. Is that true in the Amazon area?
Well, I spent many years in the Amazon studying the shamans in the Amazon. But what I found is that they did not come from a lineage. All of the shamanic schools had been destroyed by the conquest. So then I went to the high mountains, to the Andes, and began working with the last of the Inka in the Peruvian Andes. And over many, many years of studying them at first as an anthropologist, and then studying with them, over many years, I became a shaman. I became a practitioner of energy medicine and someone that is able to walk with beauty on the earth, to not be seen as a predator when you went into the garden. But see, for the shaman, there's no difference between being killed by a microbe and being killed by a jaguar. And to us, being killed by a microbe is an illness, and being killed by a jaguar is bad luck, or it's an accident. But for the shaman, they're the same. You have to be in good relationships with viruses and parasites and microbes, and with jaguars, and with the earth, and with nature. Otherwise, they're going to be looking at you as lunch. So it was over the years that I became a student of the shamans and became a Western shaman, a modern shaman. And today I integrate cutting-edge neuroscience and brain science with the ancient methodologies for working with the aura, with the energy field, with the blueprint that organizes and creates health in the body.
So at a certain point, a few years ago, you found that you had contracted a lot of parasites and kind of internal issues, I guess, based on a lot of your travel. You had stuff growing on your brain and your heart, and I think your liver. How did that come down, and what did you think about it? How did you feel about that, and what did you do? Because that's going to be kind of the stepping stone into the longevity work you're doing now and the Grow a New Body book. So what happened to you to make that shift?
Yeah. Over the years of traveling through the Amazon and the Andes and the rainforest in Indonesia and North Africa and Australia, I contracted a bunch of parasites. I acquired all of these hitchhikers, viruses and parasites, about 20 of them. For example, there are 5 kinds of hepatitis. I had all 5 of them.
Wow.
There are viruses and that you only pick up in North Africa. They put me on a world map. So I became really, really sick. I became very ill, and the doctors told me that I should get in line for a liver transplant because my liver was shot. and that I had a heart that was full of holes, and I had parasites in my brain. Now I knew I could probably get a new liver and a new heart, because there are heart liver transplants. But where was I going to find a good brain? They're not easy to come by. So I did use Western medicine, which is fantastic for trauma, the best for trauma, not for chronic conditions, but for trauma, fantastic. And it's great at killing things. And I killed off the parasites and the bugs. But then I had a liver that was dead, dysfunctional. I was gray, basically. My heart was full of holes, and I had millions of dead parasites in my brain. And that's when I began to work with the shamanic medicine, with the plants, with the herbs, with the plant-based diet, with the supplements, and with the energy field work, upgrading the quality of the energy field so I could grow a new body. And I grew a new liver, I grew a new heart, and I repaired my brain. And today I have a brain that I'm enjoying quite a bit, and better than I've been in a long time, and a heart that is completely healed, and a brand new liver. That got me started on studying our DNA. Because remember, I came from a Western background, so I started looking at how are we programmed not only for repairing the body, which is what Western medicine does, but regenerating the body. How do we grow a new body? And discovered that, in effect, we grow a new body every 7 years. Every 7 days, you regrow, you change all the cells in the upper layer of your skin. Every 3 days, your lungs and your GI tract is exchanged. Every 7 years, you have completely new bones. So how do we not just grow a slightly older and more wrinkled version of ourselves, but how do we tap into the original codes, which are now stored in password-protected regions in our DNA, that help you to grow a new body? And we know we have those codes because we grew a body once. So how do we break into those regions, and how do we use it to create a healthy body that ages differently, that lives a long and healthy life, and that dies differently?
Okay, let's talk about that. Again, Guys Radio, your host, Robert Manni, my special guest, Dr. Alberto Villoldo. We're talking about his book, Grow a New Body. And right now we're talking about how he grew a new body and replaced some organs. So the listeners out there are all saying, well, what do you mean you grew a new liver? You grew a new heart? I know it takes time for, the cells to replace themselves, but how did that actually occur for you? When did you realize that things were shifting? And then also, I think we need to get into that whole gut brain concept, because I don't think a lot of people understand the importance of what we ingest, and that the fact that the gut is a second brain and is just as important as that brain that's sitting inside our skull.
Yeah, so let's start with, how does regeneration happen?
Yep.
Basically, we are built for regeneration. We're designed for regeneration. Now, I want to give you a really interesting fact, which is that there are about 40 million species in the planet, 40 million different species, from grasshoppers to butterflies to insects, hundreds of species, to whales, to orangutans and tigers and jaguars and humans. And out of those 40 million, there are only 3 species that are not programmed for death, that don't have a death program in their DNA. Every other species in the planet, when the female is no longer able to bear children, she dies off. Nature eliminates her. Everyone except 3 species: humans, whales, and dolphins. And it's only among humans that you find grandmothers, that you go through menopause. Menopause does not exist among hyenas, doesn't exist among wolves. You don't have any grandmother wolves. You have grandmother orcas that teach the young how to hunt, and teach them how to communicate, and teach them about life in the sea. Humans, orcas, whales, and dolphins, we do not have a death program in our DNA. We were built maybe for immortality. It's extraordinary when you consider that. What keeps that program from kicking in are toxins. So this is the problem we're dealing with today, is that we have become so toxic from the GMO foods that we eat, from the pesticides in our food, from the pollution in the air, from the poisons in our water, that we begin to build up toxins, and our signals get scrambled. And this is what is causing a huge amount of disease in the world today.
Okay, the gut, the importance of the gut and the gut brain. I'm not sure that a lot of people understand the connection between the gut and toxicity. I know that, every meal we have and everything we consume, whether it's food or media, whatever, you have a choice. I can do this or that. And it's become so important. But if you make the right choices, and based on your book and the program in the book about growing a new body, you could really, quote unquote, detoxify yourself. I had 6 years ago, doctor, I had 2 robotic surgeries. I found out I was out running. I had incredible pain. I came back the next day. I got a sonogram, and they said, okay, you have a little something on each kidney. And I had robotic surgery, and they said, you're lucky because there's 98% chance you'll never have this again. And I said, well, how did I get this? And they said, well, I don't know, it's sporadic. And I'm like, that was a great surgeon, but that's not the answer I'm looking for. So I was actually connected to Ayurvedic practitioners, and I went through an entire Ayurvedic protocol, which seems similar to your One Spirit medicine. And they basically told me, we're going to help you through supplementation and some other things, eliminate, we're going to clean up your internal landscape. Does that make sense to you? And is that really what this is all about? We have to clean ourselves up from the inside out?
Well, the very first step that we have to do is to detoxify. So imagine now, let me take that back a sec. The very first thing that we need to do is to detox, because we're all born with a waste basket inside every one of our cells. And when the toxins get through the body, they get through the gut and the bloodstream and into the cell takes those toxins that are the byproduct of metabolism and puts them in this waste basket. Now, when this waste basket fills up and begins to spill over, we call that disease. This is pathology. And that's when Western medicine steps in. But what we want to do is we want to empty the waste basket. Now, some of us are born with bigger waste baskets than the others. Some of us have very small waste baskets and get sick younger. So the goal here is to empty that basket and then have the transport mechanisms that are able to get waste out of the cell, and particularly out of your brain, and back into the bloodstream and back into your gut so you can eliminate them, pee them out or poop them out. But if your cellular elimination programs are not working properly, you're going to keep building up these toxins until you get sick. And the sicknesses that you develop are cancer, heart disease, and dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. Mm-hmm. So today, your risk of having Alzheimer's, if you live to be the age of 85, you have a 50% risk of having diagnosable Alzheimer's, a 50% risk of diagnosable Alzheimer's. And I remember when I was in the Amazon as an anthropologist, I was funded by Big Pharma, Swiss Pharma. They wanted to discover the next breakthrough cancer cure. They said to me, Alberto, you're going to become famous, you're going to become rich if you help us find the cure for cancer. And the Amazon is nature's pharmacy. So I went to villages that had never seen a light-skinned person before. And 3 months later, I came back empty-handed because there was no cancer, no heart disease, no Parkinson's, no Alzheimer's, no dementia. These people lived and ate cleanly, and they had none of these illnesses. So if we can detox the body and detox the brain, and this is so important because there's nothing more frightening than the idea of losing your mind. We can prevent these conditions. We know how to do that now.
Wow. So let's talk about some of the things in our gut that we don't want there. Namely, candida is a big one, and sugar is one of the causes of a lot of problems. Because in your book, you go into, there's a lot of dietary advice, and it seems like sugar is definitely a bad guy. Could you talk to us a little bit about the dangers of sugar?
So when we look at longevity, there are two regulators to longevity. One of them is protein, and the other one is sugar. We have a set of genes called the sirtuin genes that I call the immortality genes. They're the longevity genes, and they are downregulated. They're shut down by sugar. And if you can eliminate the sugar from your diet, these genes will kick in and will give you long life, long health. But 100 years ago, the average American ate 5 pounds of sugar a year. Today, the average American eats 195 pounds of sugar per
Yikes.
year.
Hmm.
And I don't know who's eating my chocolate chip cookies, but so here's the big problem. It's the white menace. And it's not only the sugar that we eat, but everything that sugar is added to. If you add ketchup to your food, it's all sugar. Look at the sugar content in your foods. Sugar shuts down your longevity genes. It ensures that you will have a premature and ugly death.
Hmm.
It shuts down the sirtuins, which are the longevity genes. And it's also, you've got to eliminate the bread and the pastas, anything that will turn into sugar once you ingest it. So sugars are number one. The second one is protein. We eat far too much protein. So the body developed so that when there was a shortage of food, these protein sensors said, hey, there's not very much food in the environment. We have to put energy into repair. And the body would go into repair and regeneration. As soon as there was an abundance of food, the body shifted from repair and regeneration to reproduction. Biology kicked in and said, hey, we've got to ensure the survival of the species. Let's reproduce.
Hmm.
And then the focus would go away from regeneration and repair into mating. So if we can cut back on our protein intake, don't think of a daily protein intake. Think of a weekly protein intake. Once a week is all we need. A small amount of protein, a little bit more as you grow older. And it's all in my book, Grow a New Body.
Hmm.
If you,
Let's talk
if you
about that a
can,
little bit, doctor, on the protein, because what I've I stopped eating meat like 12 years ago, and I feel great. And now I'm talking to a lot of people who are telling me, carbs are the enemy, and they don't eat they just eat meat. They're eating meat, and they eat all the fat around the marbling of the meat, and they're saying they feel better than ever. And I'm not going to argue with them, but it seems like it's going overboard the other way, where you don't need that much protein. You can get it from plant-based. What's your feelings about and your studies show you about meat? Because I think it's a real polarizing issue right now with people. They don't know. Some say just eat meat, and other people say no meat at all.
this is the paleo myth. The paleo myth is that we were big hunters and we get a bison and
Right, right.
we were eating bison all week. No, we were really terrible hunters. We were gatherers and scavengers. The human animal is a gatherer and a scavenger. We would eat meat very, very seldom. When we got lucky, we would come across roadkill and shoot the birds away and bring the antelope back.
Hmm.
So the problem with meat is that you're going to look great and feel great right now. If you eat a lot of meat because you're feeding a lot of protein, which is short-term survival for reproduction, but you're going to live a very short life in the greater span of things. Whereas curtailing your protein intake is going to allow you to step into repair and regeneration. I've eliminated red meat completely from my diet. I only occasionally will eat fish and
Hmm.
eggs, and I get plenty of protein from a plant-based diet.
Okay. How about you talk about supplements? Let me throw a couple names at you and tell me what you think. Silogite. I'm hearing a lot about that, and I've been taking it. Actually, it's this resin from the Himalayas, and it's supposedly very healthy. What's your feelings about Silogite?
I think it's a fad. I think it's a momentary fad. It's going to pass. There were goji berries, there was
Right,
kale, there was.
right.
Eat a good balanced diet and be sure you get the minerals. So there are the superfoods,
Hmm.
which are fantastic. You should be on a multivitamin. Everybody should be taking a multivitamin, because even if you eat organic and you buy this beautiful food that we get at Whole Foods, it's coming from depleted soils. It's lacking minerals, the micronutrients, the microminerals are essential. Mineral supplement.
How about silver? What's your feelings on silver?
Silver. My wife loves silver. She likes gold. She likes silver. She likes diamond. We're looking.
Like colloidal
So
silver seems to be another hot supplement.
yeah, whatever is hot, I'm very leery of. Colloidal silver is actually very good if you're flying and you need to protect yourself from airborne viruses and the like, because it will
Okay,
kill these in your nasal passages. Colloidal silver has a use. It's a medication. Be
okay.
careful with the latest fad, the latest hot thing.
Hmm.
That's very Western, masculine, patriarchal thinking. We're waiting for the vaccine, for example,
Right.
with the COVID virus. We're waiting for the magic cure. No, you don't want to be part of that group, that statistical group that gets sick. The way you avoid getting sick is by recovering your health, maintaining exceptional health. Don't wait for a vaccine, and don't change your eating habits. Forgive, change your sugar intake. When you cut back on sugars and you deal with the candida overgrowth in our gut, suddenly you step into a greater level of health. And you can do this by making your own probiotics at home. And it's a probiotic called Saccharomyces boulardii. And you can watch a video on my website,
Hmm.
the4winds.com or grownewbody.com. You can make it at home, and within 2 weeks, you'll get rid of your majority of your candida load, and you'll begin to reestablish the colony in your gut.
Okay. You also
And
talk, doctor, about intermittent. Forgive me for interrupting. I'm trying to get as much information out there in the time we have for our listeners. You talk about intermittent fasting, which is also kind of a sexy type of diet these days, and that is eating 6 hours a day and then taking 18 hours off to allow the body an opportunity to repair itself. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
so another strategy is fasting. You can do intermittent fasting. We used to feast and fast because we never had 3 meals a day. We've been eating 3 meals a day since we were born. Historically, our great ancestors ate 1 meal every 2 days, or they ate 1 meal a day if they were lucky. They would feast when they would find a grove of berries, or they would find nuts or they would fast until the next lucky find. The fasting period allowed you to go into repair and regeneration. The feasting period allowed you to go into building muscle, into building tissue. Feasting and fasting is the formula. Whether you do 18 hours of fasting, 6 hours of feeding, or you do, eating every other day. So find what works for your system. But by all means, most of us use food for comfort.
Hmm.
We don't
Right.
need that much food.
Now, if you do take you still have kind of a sweet tooth. You mentioned that honey is okay. Out of all don't go for the sugar substitutes, but it seems like honey has some value. Is that true?
Honey is wonderful if you're a bee, but honey is actually a great immune regulator, but it's also going to be raising your glycemic index,
Hmm.
and it's going to be shutting down regeneration. So if you're in a protocol, like a 7-day grow new body protocol or a 2-week grow new body protocol, you eliminate the sugars, the honeys, the stevia, all of the sweeteners, so that you can go into ketosis. You can begin burning fat for fuel, and that'll take you into repair and regeneration. The problem is that if you cheat only once during that period, you've got to start all over again. It's
Wow.
a very non-forgiving system.
Okay. And how long your program? There's a prep time. There is a grow a new body program. There's a prep time, and then there's the program itself, and then I guess ongoing. Could you just, touch on the high points as to how long it takes to prep, what you do for the prep, how long do you do the program, and then how do you kind of maintain your ketosis, et cetera, and good health, and flip on the longevity genes going forward?
Going forward means starting today. So starting today, we've got to make the choices that will create health. And this is the basis of Grow a New Body. You create the conditions for health and disease goes away. You don't have to treat disease. It never appears. The body has natural defenses. You don't get sick. That's number one. So the process is you detox the brain, you upgrade the brain with the brain nutrients and supplements. Mm-hmm. And then you create psychosomatic health. This is what will switch off the production of the stress hormones of adrenaline and cortisol and turn on the production of the bliss hormones. You'll be able to relax deeply to de-stress. You get out of fight or flight, and then the body can go into regeneration. The prep period is about making a choice. It's about saying, yes, I will choose my health, even in the face of all of the commercials, all the advertising, all of the latest nutritional fads. I will eat organic, eat clean, eat for nutrients, don't eat for taste anymore. I don't eat for flavor anymore. I eat for nutrition, and it can be very flavorful. Okay. That's step number one, and that takes a choice.
You also, another area, I think, if you take the look at the big picture here, to flip on our longevity genes, is how important is it? Because you talk about death stalking and some other areas that we don't have time to get into too deeply, but how important is it for people to have a purpose to, as far as connecting with their longevity gene and living their best life?
So here, the next step, after you detox your body, after you start eating right, you're supporting your systems, then you've got to support your mind. Mm-hmm. Your mind needs a direction and needs a purpose and needs to be part of something bigger than you and I are. And it has to be something positive. It cannot just be something like today, we're part of something bigger than you and I. We're part of something called evolution. Yep. By this virus that has been let loose in humanity. We've had to face this many, many times before. And actually, when you look at our DNA, we have not only our genome, and then we also have our biome, which is all of the flora in our gut, but we have a virome. Our virome are the viruses that we have defeated, overcome, and use it to take a step in our evolution. And that's all in our DNA. 95% of our DNA are the fossil records of the viruses that we have defeated, from the Black Plague to smallpox to. So today we're facing a test from nature and an invitation to take an evolutionary quantum leap. And you have to be part of that leap. This is the experiment that nature is doing with humans today. Will you come up to a higher level of humanity, become a new human that lives sustainably and collaboratively and healthfully and is mindful of the planet? So yes, find something that's bigger than you are, line up behind it, and this will create the health that will take you for a very, very long life.
Fantastic. Okay, our special guest, Guys Radio, Dr. Albert Villoldo. The new book is Grow a New Body. Doctor, please tell us, I would like to ask you one last question. What is your best first step that any of us listening can make in terms of living their best lives and extending their longevity and growing a new body? And then also just tell us where everybody can find out more about you and your books and your teachings and your seminars, etc.
You can I encourage you to get the Grow New Body book. And even if you don't get my book, there are many, many other books that are very good out there. But today we have to protect our health. We have to take that next step, not the first step, the next step in your health, and it has to be radical. You can find out more about our programs at albertovilloldo.com or growanewbody.com. And it has a lot of protocols for free that you can do at home, a supplement list and strategies, how you can create health in your kitchen and in your mind. And then you can step into that great quest, which is how do we dream a new world into being? We need a healed brain to do that. And we need to step up to our higher mind and resources. So I
Fantastic.
grow a new body, growanewbody.com. Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you for what you do.
Okay. Well, thank you, Doctor. And I am going to make a pledge to you. My wife and I both agreed that as we're reading your book, we're going to do the protocol. And maybe in the future, I'll reach out to you and maybe you'll come back on the show and we'll talk about what happened to us. And also we'll drill a little bit deeper into the divine feminine, some other aspects of the book that I think are important to share. But in any case, I'm honored that you've come on to Guys Radio. Please keep doing the great work. And thank you, Dr. Albert Villoldo.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you. Be well. Blessings to you. Good luck with the project, the program, huh?
I can't wait. Thank you.
It's Guy Radio.
Okay, that was a fantastic chat with Dr. Villoldo. He is an amazing guy. Imagine those experiences, 30 years down in the Amazon, traveling through the jungles, learning about shamanism. Wow, what experiences he must have had. So I think the biggest learning from Dr. Villoldo and his book, this one, Grow a New Body, is that the most important thing we can do for longevity is to pay attention to our gut health, what we consume, what we eat, avoid sugar, evolve towards a more plant-based diet. Just be careful what we eat. I know there's a lot of folks who are like eating more meat than ever. That's up to them. If you do that, okay, and you feel good, that's your thing. All I do here on Guys Radio, I bring information and experts out here, and you can determine what you want to do. But it seems like a more plant-based diet and doing things to manage your gut health are important, however you want to do it. All I ask is that you just consider every side of it when you're thinking about your health, because that's pretty important stuff there. Okay, Guys Radio, we're here every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time on KCAA here in Southern California. 102.3, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. The show rebroadcasts on Sundays at 2 p.m. The podcast drops every Thursday. We're worldwide, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, Blog Talk Radio, CastBox. You can stream the show on KCAA or my revised, upgraded, better than ever website, robertmanni, MANNI.com. We're all over social media. Also, you can catch the shows now on YouTube. We're putting shows onto YouTube. So we're getting with that program. It's a process, but we're getting there. And I'm also all over social media. You can check me out on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. If you want to support the show, I would suggest you rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts to Guys Radio, and pick up my novel, The Guy's Guide to Love, about two dudes in advertising competing for love, sex, power, and money in New York City, the city that never sleeps, and where they play for keeps. And it's a fun book. It's been called the male successor to Sex and the City. It's kind of a rom-com, sexy romp, but it's about something. And it's about redemption and friendship and relationships and sex and spirituality, believe it or not. And it's a lot of fun. I think you'll enjoy the book. Everybody seems to dig it. So Guys Radio, we're here for you every week. I love doing a show. I'm so appreciative to our listeners. I'm so appreciative to the many guests we've had. I think I've interviewed over 500 people now. We've done about 415 shows. We've got a whole bunch of great guests lined up for the next couple of months. So really psyched to keep it going and grow. So Guys Radio, your host Robert Manni, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next week. And as I always like to say, guys, finish first.